Hello and welcome to Big Frank's Kitchen. I'm Big Frank. It's been raining all night, so we're going to be making Vietnamese pho, pho.
Pho, pho, pho.
Anyways, whichever way you pronounce it, we're making Vietnamese noodle soup today.
Alright, I'm taking a couple of my baking sheets out. First one, lined with aluminum foil, I'm gonna go ahead and lay out my aromatics. I'm using big, thick cuts of ginger. We like it thick around here, so I'm gonna go ahead and lay them out. Now I have my yellow onions and red onions, all cut in half. I'm gonna lay them onto my tray with the cut side up so that they don't stick onto the aluminum foil when I roast them in the oven. Now for the next tray, I'm gonna line it up with aluminum foil. This is where I'm gonna put my 3 different cuts of beef. I'm using shank, oxtail, and brisket for this pho. The shank and the oxtail are full of bones and tendon. It's gonna flavor our pho really beautifully. And I'm just laying them out, giving them plenty of space so that they don't stick to each other when they roast in the oven. The brisket is a nice thick cut. It's going to load our pho with that beefy flavor. Alright, it's been an hour and I've just pulled the aromatics out of the oven. The onions are charred, while the ginger has shrunk down and dried out, and this is exactly what we're looking for to flavor our broth. Now I've just pulled out the meat, our piece de resistance. It is nice and well browned. A lot of the fat is glistening and sizzling on the sheet. Look at that color. This does look appetizing, but it is not done yet. Without even letting it cool, I'm gonna go ahead and transfer the meat into the stock pot with the bones going in first. Make sure you carefully place the shank into the bottom of the pan. You don't want that marrow to fall out. I have a little bit of trouble with my oxtail. Just takes a little bit of patience. You don't want to get burned. Again. And lastly, the brisket. Just lay that bad boy on the bones, nice and gently. After you put all your meat in the stock pot, you're going to want to cover it with cold water and then let it sit for at least 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you're going to transfer it onto the stove and you're going to set it to boil. I'm going to put the cover on so it can reach a boil quickly. Now I'm going to toast my spices. On a cold pan, I'm putting 2 sticks of cinnamon. Next, I'm putting some whole peppercorns. Now I'm putting some coriander seed. And then I'm adding some star anise. Now this is optional. I love cardamom. I'm making sure to add a few pods of cardamom to my spice blend. And lastly, don't forget to use cloves. Now you're going to turn on the heat, and then just like me, you're going to realize you're out of gas. It's very important to toast spices. Why are we toasting this? Because we're waking up the flavor. That's why when you toast spices, it smells really, really good. It will only take about 5 minutes to toast these spices. You know you're done when it smells like church, or you hear angels sing. Once your broth has started boiling, go ahead and gently add in your aromatics. Treat your food with respect. You don't want to get burned. After gently adding in your aromatics, go ahead and throw your spices in. Make sure that all of the spices and aromatics are evenly distributed into your broth. Now look at that broth. Look at that glisten. Now you set your broth to a simmer and let it sit for a few hours. Alright, the sun's out. That few hours has become 6 hours. So we're going to pop open the lid and go check our brisket. The brisket is a great way to tell how done the broth is. If the brisket's still hard, you're going to have to let it simmer longer. When your brisket looks like it's about to fall apart, like your New Year's resolution, it's done. Keep in mind that if the brisket is soft, the shank and the marrow is super soft. We're going to use a sieve to separate the spices and aromatics from the broth. Look at that shank. The marrow, it's like that little gem in the cave. And that oxtail, that meat is just right. So tender, so tender. After cooling down the brisket for at least 30 minutes, we're going to want to put it away into the refrigerator to let it chill for a couple hours before serving. This makes it easier to slice later on. Alright, it's close to dinner, and now it's time to season our broth. we're going to be using three things here. We're going to be using salt, brown sugar, and fish sauce. Fish sauce. I have difficulty saying fish sauce. I'm just going to call it what it is, patis. You want to make this broth a little bit on the salty side though, because we're going to be adding plenty of components later on in our pho. After seasoning your broth and deeming it perfectly balanced, it's time to get your noodles ready. For our noodles, we'll be using rice noodles. Now, you can't use anything but rice noodles. You can't use egg noodles, you can't use spaghetti noodles, you can't use anything else but rice noodles. And it's gotta be them thick, stick rice noodles. We're gonna be soaking our rice noodles in a bowl of cold water. We don't want to throw in these dried rice noodles straight into a boiling pot of water. Throwing them in straight to a boiling pot of water is going to make them gummy, mushy, and it's not going to give it a nice texture. Now to the garnishes. I'm thinly slicing some white onion, and then I'm going to go and soak it in a bowl of cold water so that it doesn't oxidize. Next, we're going to make our little sauce. I'm thinly slicing some garlic. Make sure to slice your garlic extra thin so that the flavor seeps right in. Next, we're going to chop our chili peppers. The seeds is what gives the heat. Please don't be a wuss. Keep the seeds in there. The heat is necessary. Trust me on this. After chopping up your chili peppers, you're going to want to put them in with your garlic, seeds and all, and then soak it in some nice cane vinegar. Cut some nice wedges of limes and put them aside. Now, after you soaked your garlic slices in chili, you're going to want to transfer it to a larger bowl. After you transfer it to a larger bowl, add more vinegar, add a couple teaspoons of white sugar, and then you're going to taste it. Once it hits that nice balance of sweet, sour, and heat, it's perfect. And lastly, of course, cilantro. Can't forget cilantro. That's my favorite herb. Now it's assembly time. I've taken my brisket out of the fridge and I'm slicing my brisket. It could have used a little bit more time to harden, but I'm hungry now. I have a simmering pot of water, and now I'm gonna go ahead and put my rice noodles into that pot. I'm just gonna stir that rice noodles around a little bit, count a few Mississippis, maybe 10, maybe 15, but you're gonna feel it once it's soft. Take it right out and go ahead and put it into your bowl. Now that I have my noodles in my bowl, I'm going to go and lay down nice and gently my brisket. I'm going to put a few pieces of brisket right on that bed of noodles. That brisket may be a little cold, but once I've added that broth in, it's going to warm it right up. Once you've added enough broth, that's under your preference of course, I'm going to pull some basil out and put it right into my bowl. Next, I'm going to add my white onions. Now remember, the noodles is the bed. Next, I'm going to add my, what is this called again? Soybean thing? Toge. What's toge? Toge, whatever toge is in English. What's toge in English? What's toge in English? Bean sprouts. Add my bean sprouts. Putting in my bean sprouts. Next, I'm adding some cilantro to the top. Now I'm adding here my garlic and chili sauce, making sure to drizzle a little bit around my pho. And don't forget your wedge of lime. Now we're done. We've assembled our bowl of pho. But this is not how I would have my pho. This is good pho, don't get me wrong. But this is basic pho. This is beginner pho. This is the gateway pho. If you've never had pho before, this is how you should have pho for your very first time. But for me, I'm a veteran. My pho, I'm gonna do my pho differently. Remember that shank and oxtail from a while ago? We're gonna shred the meat out of the oxtail. It's nice and fatty. Now on a cold pan, you're gonna wanna lay the oxtail flat. It's gonna sear the side and crisp up in its own fat. And don't forget, fat is flavor here. And this thing is loaded with flavor. It's time to assemble. First, I'm gonna take my beautiful crispy oxtail and I'm gonna put a nice generous portion of it and lay it onto my bed of rice noodles. Next, taking parts out of the shank, got some beautiful tendon. Most importantly, that marrow. I'm gonna add that meaty, beefy brisket slices just to round everything off. Now we cover it with our nice and silky blanket of broth. I'm gonna take some basil and put plenty of it. Next, I'm gonna add plenty of white onions. I love onions, so I'm making sure to put plenty of white onions. Now I'm adding a couple of wedges of lime. I'm adding in my favorite herb, cilantro. I'm making sure to put plenty of it. For me, you have to make sure to sprinkle a little bit extra. And finally, for that sauce, I'm putting plenty of chilies and garlic on top of everything. And then I make sure to drizzle plenty of vinegar. And that's my pho. Pho for a man like me. We had voice and everything for this taste test of our pho. Problem is that it was still raining really hard, so it drowned out our audio.
So I put a whole mess of cilantro, a whole mess of chili and garlic.
So I'm gonna go ahead and just give a voiceover of me reacting to the pho. For my bowl of pho, I got a lot more basil. I got a lot more cilantro because I love cilantro. I got a lot more white onions. Just got a lot more of everything. But most importantly here is that oxtail that was fried up in its own fat to make it nice and crispy. The meat itself, the brisket, it's wonderfully tender, as well as that tendon and that beautiful marrow. The broth is clean and crisp tasting. There's no harshness, it's well balanced. All the spices is there, you can taste the spices there. That toasting of the spices makes sure that they're all present. The noodles has a very nice bite to it. This is because we pre-soaked our noodles and quickly cooked it in some simmering water. So it's not mushy. It's kind of like al dente. Everything is so nice and well balanced. Adding the chili and garlic gives it a nice heat. It also helps cut the fat down. I don't know if anybody notices though, but I don't put any bean sprouts in my pho. Aww. I hate bean sprouts. I don't like bean sprouts. I don't want it to have any business with my pho. I mean, I can tolerate it, but I don't want it. I'm not gonna put it in there, so I don't put it in my own bowl of pho. And that's it. That's our pho. Thank you for watching my video. If you like our video and want to see more content in the future, please subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. Thank you for watching and see you soon.